Good morning, viewers and guests. Welcome to Channel 24, where all the information you need of history is located. Today's topic is about the Second Industrial Revolution. If you need to study the topic or even recover your history class, stay here, because this will assure you an excellent result. Remember, call your friends, family, and indeed enemies to see this channel, your confidence teacher. First, let me explain you something. The first revolution ramped up around the 1800s. It starts in Britain and it was based on the industrialization of steam, trains, and factories. This first industrial revolution led to the success of individual works from researchers such as Alessandro Volta or Michael Faraday. So, after this briefly explanation about the first industrial revolution, let's give an applause to Juan Jose Abril, recently graduated student from the National University of Colombia, specialized in history.
Good morning, everyone. Proud and honored of being here on this channel. First, let me explain you basics about this revolution. So, the Second Industrial Revolution helped a lot to the society. Finally, streets had a decent light for the night, and especially the cars were a huge innovation and a great advance of technology. It helped with transportation, economy, reduction of horse poop, I will explain you this later, and indeed for agriculture processes. So why horse poop? In that time, even though trains and boats were the main transportation methods, horse riding was still presented in all places. But this caused lots of cleaning problems. The city was full of horse poop, so much that the government started promoting a new important job. Basically, it literally was human poop scoopers. Thanks to cars, the streets started to be more clean, but then it started the pollution. And this honorable job had an end stop. The first idea of a car was proposed by Carl Benz, but the idea he had was too expensive for the producing of huge amount of cars. So, what happened next? Henry Ford arrived, a huge enterprise man who created the idea of a car. He proposed a more elaborate idea of production of cars, beginning with the Ford 999, but it wasn't still enough to solve the problems. In 1908, the first car was invented, being a huge public interest, the Model T. When the company started to realize to create that cars, it was a huge impact how people stayed outside the factory just for looking how they created the cars, and that became a huge public interest and a huge impact for the society. Actually, as a fun fact, Henry Ford literally arrived at the previous car companies, and he realized that the manufacturing of the cars was by knowledge of people with no skill or idea of what they were doing. What did Ford do? He started to give orders to unknown people, and then with no reason he became the creator of new transportation method, the cars.
Very interesting, Mr. Armel. Now, the audience and including me have some question for you. First of all, what is the difference between first and second industrial revolution?
Mr. Morales, that is a very good question, and it actually has a lot of differences. First, I think the main difference of both revolutions is obviously the differences between innovations of each era. While the first revolution had trains and factories and whatever, the second industrial revolution was based more on electricity, cars, and a more elaborate work. Um, this industrial revolution, the second, resulted from the industrialization of electricity and mass manufacturing. As I said before, cars, electricity, and advanced communication technology started to be invented. Also, there was a lot of socio-political problems of the industrial revolutions. Even though the innovations were, for some people, a great happiness, for some groups of people, the industrial revolution wasn't worth for their lives. For example, on the first industrial revolution, according to History Channel, I recommend it, presented a huge amount of child labor cases. Since the age of four, just four, children started to work for factories and doing exhausting and hard jobs. And it was a benefit for the owner of the factories because first, they could get elaborate works. Second, children wouldn't ask a lot of money, so without spending too much money with child labor. And finally, having the assurance that children are less likely of striking against the bad work condition because they feel intimidated by an adult. On the other hand, the second revolution had problems instead with adult workers. For example, Ford Industries has, of course, of Henry Ford, one of the huge car development companies there. I explained it later, before, sorry. It had a difficult process for people to work there. The conditions were four. First, to enter to the company, you had to have a university training, a financial backing, and professional licensing. Second, once they have been assigned as worker of the company, mandatorily, according to the contract, they had to work at least 6 months. Later of the 6 months, if they wanted, they could leave the company. But mandatorily, they had to work at least 6 months. Third, they had to have good moral habits and at least be involved in civic life by helping with political, communal, or environmental processes. And finally, the fourth condition is that they had to swear off all involvement with union activities. Sorry.
Okay, very interesting, Miss Ariel. So now, next question. When this second revolution happened?
Okay, Morales. Sorry, Mr. Morales. First of all, sorry because I am trying to give a complete answer, but this topic is like one of my favorite of history since I graduated from the National University of Colombia. Next question. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Okay, Miss Ariel, no problem. When the second industrial revolution happened?
Okay. According to some investigators, the second revolution started between 1870 and 1914. Between the late of 1800s and the beginning of 1900s. Why did it begin? Thanks to capitalism. It started to spread in many countries in Europe and the world. Obviously, the scientific and technological innovations helped to create new systems of life.
Oh, well, what do you mean with systems of life, sir?
Mr. Morales, what I mean with system of life? Basically, the scientific and technological inventions, as I mentioned before, help people with new solutions for their life. People that had to spend long periods of time to reach a place. For example, the car helped them reduce that time. The economy is starting to increase in short periods of time. Great number of cars were sold in short periods of time by a very considerable price. Indeed, in one time, the prices of cars got to decrease a 50%. This because of the obviously the demand.
Well, next question. Where in what place this second revolution take place?
Uh, well, basically it took place in principally Britain. But it is obviously on the continental Europe, North America, for example, USA, and Japan were the principal places. But then obviously it started to spread all around the world.
Okay, thank you so much. Next question. How it starts expanding through Europe?
And first, I have to accept that these are very good questions, Mr. Morales. So, how did it start to span for Europe? The Second Industrial Revolution began in the United Kingdom, which influenced France and Belgium to follow in its footsteps. Of innovation and renewal at an electrical and mechanical systems. Later, it was expanding through the Netherlands and Germany, who was a great example of this industrial revolution.
Okay, Mr. Abril, so we have finished our interview, but I have a last question for you. If you had the chance to live at the time of the second industrial revolution, would you accept?
Hmm. Mm, I don't know, Mr. Morales. It is a very good question, but I think I have a very short answer. I would definitely not live in that era. Because even though in that time the technology was the best for the knowledge of that era, obviously, I consider that obviously the technology of this century is much better. We have more advanced cars, we have more advanced technology in medicine, in transportation, in communication, and basically in all the areas society has.
Okay, Mr. Ariel. With this, we conclude our history program for today. I hope you like it. Mr. Ariel, thank you a lot for your knowledge and viewers.